เป็นทีวี Channel 2
Almanac is a production of KTCA TV for the stations of Minnesota Public Television.
Alphabet Soup Night here on Almanac. NPR has become the first state business to offer benefits to unmarried partners of employees. NWA, Northwest Airlines deal, grinds to a conclusion on Monday. And CPS, an acronym we made up for Carson Peary Scott, which is the subject of a boycott by African-American groups. So don't go AWOL. Our discussions will start ASAP. Almanac is NEXT.
Funding for Almanac is provided in part by the law firm of Larkin, Hoffman, Daly, and Lindgren, practicing in the areas of government relations, general business, and environmental law. The St. Paul Companies, a worldwide insurance organization. Group Health, Inc., providing medical and dental care in over 50 Twin Cities locations. Pentax Ophthalmic, local manufacturers of eyeglass lenses and anti-reflective lens coatings. NSP, the energy to make things better. And by Gabbard's Furniture and Design Studio of Edina. There's no place like home, and there's no place like Gabbard's. Arts reporting in Almanac is presented through a grant from Ashland Oil and its Super America subsidiary, which has 159 employee-operated stores throughout Minnesota.
A spokesman for the Winter Carnival answered charges of sexism by saying that this year the Vulcans have changed their act.
Lots of changes have occurred in that respect. And we'll have to watch the carnival play out, and I just think that...
And it looks like things will be different this year. Almanac has obtained a copy of a videotape that's being used to train this year's crew.
Greetings, fellow Vulcans, and welcome to the official 1992 training video. This is a very important year for the Vulcans because, like every other embarrassing institution in town, we'll be thrust into the national media spotlight as a result of the Super Bowl. So we're making some changes to appease the whining, bleeding hearts who have been attacking us for years. In the past, as you know, Vulcans have been selected by local business leaders through the Old Boy Network. As a result, we've ended up with the biggest bunch of white guys this side of the St. Paul Fire Department. But this year, using a special computerized metropolitan demographic analysis, we'll assemble a crew with the perfect mix of race, gender, and fashion sense. So what do you say? Be a sport. Give it a try.
Get away from me, you greasy freak. I don't want to be a Vulcan.
But your friends will never recognize you in this uniform.
Oh my gosh, these crazy Winter Carnival people.
A traditional part of a Vulcan's duty has been to kiss unsuspecting women and smear disgusting black grease on their faces. Well, with a lot of visitors in from out of town and a general attitude that you're not allowed to have any fun anymore, we'll have to change our tactics. Here's an example of the new proper procedure for smudging. Excuse me, sir. Please do not be alarmed by my ridiculous appearance. I am not a lunatic or an annoying street performer. I am a Vulcan, a treasured part of our winter carnival. I have stopped you to ask if you would like to be smudged. Should you consent to smudging, you understand that you waive all rights to legal action against the Vulcans, the Winter Carnival, or any of its subsidiaries. Be it advised that our smudge paint is non-toxic, hypoallergenic, and was never tested on innocent animals. Please do not feel pressured by my presence, but I would like to now know, may I smudge you?
Yeah, I'll give you something to smudge.
I take it that's a no? Another image problem we need to correct stems from the legend of our annual battle with King Boreas and the forces of winter. This reputation for bellicosity just won't cut it anymore. The Cold War is over. We need to make peace with King Boreas and form a federation of fun and festivity. And to further help us improve our image, we need to more closely associate ourselves with our logical Vulcan brothers. May the Vulcans live long and prosper.
If you were swamped by the holiday rush, here are some state headlines you missed this week. The Northwest Airlines deal made news on several fronts this week as the $800 million package approaches a Monday vote. We will have more on Northwest later on. Monday's news included the announcement by Twin Cities African-American leaders that they have started a boycott of Carson's department stores, and we will have more on that. The longest labor strike in state history ended on Wednesday when the Hibbing plant of American Linen Supply decided to comply with an order to reinstate 7 female workers. The so-called Hibbing 7 had been out of work for 4 years. This morning's news included a ruling today by the state Supreme Court which threw out a state law that mandates stiffer sentences for users of crack cocaine than for users of powdered cocaine. Crack cocaine users, many of whom are black, received longer sentences under the state law. But for our first story tonight, it has been making news for the past couple of days. The problems faced in the Northwest Territories by Minnesota explorer Lonnie Dupree. Dupree is leading what is called the Northwest Passage Expedition, which is now on hold after half of his 36 sled dogs died due to exposure and stress. Dupree has been condemned by local animal rights activists who have called for him to stop his trek. Heidi Grieger is one of those activists. She is with the Animal Rights Coalition of the Twin Cities. And joining us by phone, we hope, is Paul Shirkey, an Arctic explorer and friend of Lonnie Dupree. Paul Shirkey, are you there?
Yeah, we're here in Ely, Minnesota.
Thank you, Paul, for joining us. You have recently talked to Dupree. Based on that conversation, was he a cause of his problems?
There's no question that there were some errors and judgments made. Lonnie will be the first to admit that, and he feels terrible about this. I don't know if anybody feels worse than he does. So there's no question that the members of this team are feeling the weight of this in a big way, and of course the sentiments down here are adding to that as well.
What were the principal errors in judgment that he made?
Well, there's a very slim margin for error in the Arctic, and they set off on a 320-mile stretch of travel, provisioned for some 20 days they expected that journey to last. However, the Arctic threw them an unexpected bout of severe weather, where the rations were consumed much more rapidly than anticipated, and they ran, as I understand it, 3 days shy of food, which was just beyond the margin allowed for them to make it safely to the next village with the entire team and the dogs intact. And unfortunately, try as they might to get everyone to the next village, along the way, some of the dogs simply did not have sufficient reserves to make the distance. And there's no question that it was a terrible tragedy that so many dogs died.
Heidi, what should be the outcome of this if these errors in judgment did occur and the weather and other factors conspired here? Are these types of expeditions something that should not be allowed with the use of the animals and so forth? What do you think?
Well, we at the Animal Rights Coalition have 3 major problems with this sort of thing. One is that the dogs were used at all and jeopardized in this manner in such an ill-conceived plan for the expedition. Secondly is that the explorers did not stop the expedition before half of the dogs died. Perhaps they could have stopped, after 5 had died. It seems incredible that they continued until fully half of the dogs perished. And finally, we're very concerned that the expedition not continue. Certainly at this point, it's just unconscionable that Lonnie Dupree would consider putting the remaining dogs, which must be in terrible shape at this point, since half of them died. The remaining dogs are probably half dead, to put those at further risk, and also to try to raise money to bring in new dogs to finish this expedition.
Paul, what is the reaction, if you will, the exploring community about this as far as future use of animals? I wonder, is there a legitimate reason to use them for something like this, or is it more of a publicity stunt? What's the feeling in your community about this?
Well, first let me say something about the dogs, and I know some of the dogs are involved in this project because I've worked with those same dogs myself. Although they are Lonnie's own dogs, the ones Lonnie owned 12 of the dogs that are in use on this expedition. 4 of his 12 were among those which died, and I I'm very familiar with those particular dogs. Lonnie's team, they're all purebred Eskimo work dogs. Now, like draft horses, these dogs have an instinctive desire to pull heavy loads for long distances, and their fur and their feet are adapted for extreme Arctic conditions. Now, no one's claiming that the incident is excusable, but on the other hand, people who don't know this breed of dogs, who haven't worked with Eskimo dogs, I think it's unreasonable to contend that it's cruel to allow these dogs to do what they do best in their native environment. In fact, the breed stock from which Lonnie has raised these dogs are from the very area in which he's traveling. There's no question that these dogs are operating within the element for which they are most best suited.
Heidi, there are those who would say that the position you're taking might be applicable to household pets, but not to a working breed such as this.
Just before I came down to the station, I received a phone call from an expert Alaskan musher who requested to remain anonymous, and he indicated that the dogs that they were using were the wrong kind of dogs. Now, I'm not an expert in this, but I'm taking it on his advice.
Heidi, let me pick up on that, because Paul Shirky, at least in an article that was published in the newspaper, it appears that Lonnie Dupree did say that perhaps the dogs of one of the Alaskans, the one who lost 10 of his 12 dogs, were used to deeper snow, warmer climates, and shorter trips. We overestimated their ability to handle this trip.
Okay, are you addressing me?
Yes, I am, Paul. So in other words, while overall this breed may be trained for this kind of expedition, certainly if the weather and the conditions such as these dogs experienced occur, not all the dogs can handle that. And that is something that should have been thought through in advance?
Yeah, I can't speak for it. I think you're referring to dogs that belong to an Alaskan team member whose name is John Nuremberg.
That's correct.
I don't know John. I don't know his dogs. I'm not at all familiar with the breed. I only know the dogs that Lonnie owns, so I'm sorry, but I can't speak on behalf of John's situation.
Will there be some new standards set, Paul? Do you think folks that do what you do are going to get together and come up with some standards, or will anything come of this besides just a very sad episode?
Well, I think it is a very sad chapter in the interest that people who live in Minnesota and elsewhere have had in the far north, and I think that all of us who are involved and have been involved in the Arctic know that when you're in the Arctic, you live by the rules of the Arctic, and they're very different than the rules
that's
we live by
one thing, though,
down
for
here.
humans to take that risk. It's quite another to put animals, innocent animals without a voice in that situation. If they want to be adventurers and go out and do that and put their own lives at risk, you know, we have nothing to say about that, but we're concerned about the dogs perishing.
Paul Shirky, have you made a recommendation to Dupree as to whether he should continue this expedition?
No, I don't feel I'm in a position to do so, because despite my conversations with Lonnie, I don't know enough about exactly the predicament they were in, and I don't know that any of us down here serving as armchair quarterbacks, or I should say armchair adventurers, none of us are in a position to pass judgment on exactly what he should do or what has happened or how it could have been avoided. But all I do know is that Lonnie, last I talked to him, he didn't know what he was going to do. He said his priority right now is to ensure that the team members and the dogs get back in the best possible health, and then to
make a decision
take from there.
Paul Shirky, we'll end on that note. Thank you for joining us from Ely, Minnesota. And Heidi Greger, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good.
Minnesota Public Radio plans to offer insurance benefits to unmarried domestic partners of their employees. In other words, instead of having to be a spouse to get the benefits, you just have to say that.
Yeah, why not? Because there's a lot of people living together that aren't married, and they should get the benefit too.
Married partners only. That's the way I feel about that.
I think that's fair. You know, I think they should do that, whether you're married or not, you know.
It might be a nice idea, but I really don't see it feasibly being done, and I really don't think that should be done.
Minnesota Public Radio found itself making a little news this week. It was announced that NPR's parent organization will become the first business in the state to extend employee benefits to unmarried partners of its employees. While some cities around the country have similar benefits, few companies do. Jim Young is the Human Resources Director for the Minnesota Communications Group, which includes Minnesota Public Radio and its affiliated companies. Jim Young, explain to me how the program works. Let's say I were an employee of Minnesota Public Radio and I was unmarried and I had a partner, male or female. What would I have to do to receive now these benefits under this new plan?
Well, you would apply for them, and you and your partner would sign an affirmation that you are committed to each other, that you are not blood relatives, and that you're consenting adults.
What is the scope of benefits that will be offered under this plan? Is it just health and health benefits, or will it go beyond that?
Yes, but it includes dental.
So health, but it's health in terms of physical and dental health benefits, but nothing more. Is that correct?
Wonderful, yes.
Where did this idea come from? From within, from employees, from management, outside pressures?
No, there wasn't a lot of pressure. It's been a subject for about 8 years, but there's been a lot in the media. There's been a lot of discussion in the senior management, a lot of discussion among our board members and the employees. It came together because we were able to put the finances, we were able to get approval by the underwriters, and the time was right.
You are self-insured, is that not correct? And yet you still needed an underwriter to underwrite this plan, correct?
Yes.
Did you have difficulty getting an underwriter to do this, and if so, why?
Well, we're not sure why, but we did have difficulty. I think that our brokers went through maybe 5 different underwriters and finally found one in the Twin Cities that would insure us. And these are people that insure the stop loss. They insure up past a certain limit.
Well, let me throw out some reasons. Because this has to do with unmarried partners, male or female, in other words, it could be 2 males or 2 females, was there an issue of homophobia, for example, involved in this? Was there an issue of concern about AIDS?
I didn't hear any of that because I think it's pure economics. And there has, even though there's been about 7 years of actuarial experience with these kinds of policies, I've noticed in the news that some of the underwriting companies do not want their name affiliated with it, and it's probably because of those reasons that you name. But there's no evidence that these people are more at risk if they're an unmarried domestic partner.
What has been the public reaction given the news this week? Minnesota Public Radio is a public community entity. Has there been negative reaction from your public?
Well, we've had lots of calls, and about 1/3 of them have been from other employers or people that are interested in benefits, people that do a lot of writing. We've had some calls from our listeners, and we've had some reaction from people that do business with us.
Negative or positive?
It's a mix. There's been some negative response, and most of that has been people taking their values and saying, well, my value contradicts with the homosexual lifestyle, and they see this as a gay issue rather than a health care issue. And so that's probably part of the reaction.
But there'll be no backing off?
No.
All right. Jim Young, thank you for joining us very much.
Black leaders are calling for a boycott of Carson Prairie Scott because of racism by store employees. What do you think about the boycott?
Ooh, I really think there is some merit to the boycott. I do experience similar difficulties as a consumer.
I think it's merited because they shouldn't bias their, the security guards shouldn't pick out people just because of their race. They should pick them out because of their actions.
It appears that Carson Prairie Scott has taken very positive and constructive steps to solve the situation as far as they're concerned, and I certainly don't feel that they should be boycotted because they are working on it.
Two weeks ago, KSTP-TV ran a series of reports featuring hidden camera footage of how Twin Cities department store security guards do their jobs. To many, the most disturbing part of the series was footage of two Carson Peary Scott security guards talking about how they target and follow black shoppers. The report led to several quick actions. Meetings were set up with the store and the African American community groups. Carson Peary Scott dismissed one of the guards that was featured in the series. The other guard resigned. This week, another action was taken. A group of civil rights and community groups announced a boycott of Carson's. Gleason Glover is one of the boycott supporters. He heads the Minneapolis Urban League. Here too, Judy Cook with the Minnesota Retail Merchants Association. Now, we did invite Carson Peary Scott to join us this evening, but nobody was made available. But thanks to you two for coming down. Mr. Glover, Carson's took some steps. I mean, they really seemed to react to this in a pretty prompt manner, seemed genuinely concerned. And yet, are you rewarding their response with a boycott? What's the purpose of taking it this extra step?
Well, the purpose, quite frankly, is the fact that they did not act promptly. Carson Peary Scott knew about this as of November 14th. They were given every opportunity to respond to the series. They did not respond. They played around with the issue until the promos started popping up on the TV stations. And finally, the morning of November 26th, they decided to respond to the TV series. Furthermore, in August of 1991, in their Minnesota Rochester store, the loss prevention personnel were having a difficult time with African American shoplifters. One of the personnel entered into the electro-mailgram machine a document entitled Blacks, 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 and More Blacks. This electronic mailgram was available to 13 Carson Peary stores. When they were found out, it was brought to the attention of the administration. Of course, they said this employee was dismissed. But even after that, for 2 weeks, that mailgram, or that gram stayed within that system, circulated in electrogram for 2 weeks.
Well, Judy Cook, before we get you to respond to the proposed boycott, let me just bring Judy in, because I want to get some context here. What statistics are there regarding the demographics of shoplifters?
Well, actually, what statistics have shown is that there is no person or specific type of person that is a shoplifter. Shoplifting is a crime of greed, not one of need. And so what retailers look for, or are supposed to look for, is suspicious behavior, not any specific characteristic.
And yet, when one saw on film these Carson security guards at work, they clearly came across as racist. They clearly were operating with considerable autonomy and at times even harassing clients. What does that say about Carson's and potentially the retail industry's recruitment, training, and supervision of these individuals?
Well, Jan, first of all, I'm here to speak on behalf of the entire retail community, and Carson's is a member of our association. But let me say at the outset that the retail community was just as offended and outraged by what was depicted in that investigative series. It's an unfortunate fact of life that racism exists in our society. And of course, as retailers, our responsibility is to respond to it as it exists within our stores. And we are responding to it. Retailers have taken significant actions, as has Carson Peary Scott specifically, to try to address it and move forward from what we've seen. There's no question that it was offensive and that we need to do something about it.
Late to the game or not, Mr. Glover, are you now satisfied that steps are being taken? Or?
No, because the FBI reports, contrary to what Judy says, the FBI statistics in 1990 indicated that 67% of the shoplifters in this country were white. Experts in loss prevention say the greatest threat for shoplifting are white females between the ages of 20 and 50.
But regardless of that...
But I'm saying to you that somewhere along the line, what the policy is and the actual application of that has not been followed. And this is not unique to Carson Peary Scott. We must understand that.
There's a fellow that has a lawsuit against Dayton's right now.
That's right, but not only that, black African Americans for years and years have indicated that these things have gone on. Every time a major retailer has been confronted with the notion, it has been denied. We had no way of proving it. This was bona fide proof that it did exist. Now, what the film doesn't show is the attitude in Carson Peary Scott on that floor between the salespeople and the guards that have known this has been going on for years and years. I mean, so it's not just a single incident, but most importantly, how do you feel as an African American walking in a store to shop and you end up being looked upon as a common criminal? Every time the business community is offended, they respond with action. Their vested interest, they elect people out of office, they support other people. Now, the African-American people say, we don't like it, and what you have done is not enough. Their feelings have to be shown. Their emotions have to be shown. The fact that they have been affected and offended is important.
Yeah. Well, and Gleason, we do want to respond, and as you know, we've offered to sit down with you and have our Loss Prevention Council sit down with you. We want to respond. We want all of our customers to feel safe and comfortable in the shopping experiences that they have. And if what this says is that our policies need to be looked at and that we need to make them stronger, we want to do that. And if this says we need to do more internal monitoring to make sure that our policies are being followed, we're going to do that.
How much of an impact could the boycott have?
Actually, the difficult thing is that at this shopping season that we have now, and particularly in the tough economic times, it really has an impact on the entire community. And so that's what's a little bit frustrating about a boycott coming at this particular time.
Yes, but on the other hand, I think, Judy, you have to understand, I don't think there is anybody who is taking a position on that boycott that's trying to do anyone in. But I think you got to understand the mood of our community right now. If you were to go to any African-American church, if you were to speak to any African-American, no matter what his economic status was, and people of goodwill, they offended too. You have a community that has been hurt by this. And you can't just say, because the policies are now in effect, well, I'm going to talk about diversity training, that's going to do it. I think we've got to let this thing, you know, ease itself out, let people begin to feel that they have vented their feelings and have some impact and let the community...
What about, though, Mr. Newby, who was quoted in some columns this week? And for our viewers, just a quick reminder, Mr. Newby alleges that he was accosted by security guards at Dayton's last April. He has filed suit. He did not have a video camera, apparently, to document his allegations, but he has filed suit. He suggested this week that he was feeling isolated, and perhaps even let down, though those were not his words, by your group for not, frankly, boycotting Dayton's as well.
Well, it's unfortunate that Mr. Newby would feel that way. When he first came to the Urban League, we talked to him. He said he had an attorney, and we supported him in the way we can. This is bigger than Mr. Newby. Mr. Newby has an attorney. The court is in. He has cases in litigation. Somehow or another, his court's going to be dealt with.
And Gleason, that's why we want to deal with it.
Okay,
we want to work with you, and we want to deal with it.
She asked me about the Newby thing. I want to clear that up. Okay. Mr. Newby has every right to feel that way, but however, this is a much broader issue than Mr. Newby. This issue applies not only to the retail stores. If you were to extend this same application to employment, to housing, every facet of life in the city, you'll find the same thing exists. And I think this was the first time we've had a chance to really see firsthand this kind of behavior and being condoned.
Would you ever boycott a Dayton store, however?
Yes, I mean, but the word we're using is not boycott. The media is using that word. We're using selective buying campaign.
Selective buying. And how long shall this selective buying campaign go on?
As chairman of the Strategic Planning Committee, we will ascertain the facts and measure it weekly by weekly, and at such time that we feel that the community has gotten what it feels is fair due, then we will start the negotiations. And I appreciate what Judy has done. We've talked with Judy. I've talked with Carson Scott Perrier, and I've talked with the Downtown Council. I've talked with people at Dayton's. I mean, this is not an isolated thing where there has been no communication. Okay. I don't think there's a question about that. I don't think there's a question about the goodwill. But what has happened, we're responding to what our community feels has been an offense to them.
Time is gone.
Okay.
So thanks, Mr. Glover. Right. Judy, thanks very much. Appreciate it. One week ago, the Minnesota Orchestra held its annual meeting and filed its annual report, and it contained some sour notes. The orchestra was in the red for the third straight year. losing more than $1 million. While the orchestra has one of the largest endowments in the country, the deficit is, of course, troubling to the orchestra's administration, which is trying to remedy the problem. One possible solution looks politically unlikely: more aid from the state or the city. Nikki Carpenter chairs the Minnesota Orchestra Board. Nikki, thanks for coming down here. I'm no big expert in this area, but I get, years ago there was, Pincus Zuckerman was in town, and who was that other big name conductor? Neville Mariner. Do you have the big marquee names now on the local scene that draw the crowds? And if not, is that a concern? And would that help get more interest?
Well, that certainly could be something that, you might think would make a difference. But I don't think that really is the whole story. The Orchestral Association was involved in the long-range plan, goodness knows now, 7 or 8 years ago. At that point, we already were aware of the fact that these kinds of things could begin to materialize not only with the orchestra, but also with arts organizations around the country. So this really has not come to any surprise. Certainly, the deficit is something that is very serious. We are taking it very seriously. But I think what's more important is that we're doing something about it.
Well, can you make it up with higher ticket prices alone, or what else you got up your sleeve?
No, you can't ever do that. I mean, you can certainly price yourself out of business if you want to do that. But the interesting thing, too, is that our ticket prices are amazingly low. A flyer came through our office this past week just indicating prices in Cleveland, where the top price is $55.
What's yours?
And ours is $32. And in St. Louis, it's $48. And certainly comparing the two communities, yes, there's quite a difference in size between Cleveland and the Twin Cities, but certainly from a St. Louis point of view, we're a great deal lower.
One of the suggestions that at least was offered was seeking government support. That doesn't appear to be very realistic in these economic times of local and state government having to do cutbacks.
We're quite aware of that. Needless to say, we will try to cause some effect as far as that's concerned. Minnesota happens to be one of the states that has the lowest funding of arts, and I'm not talking about just the Minnesota Orchestra, I'm talking about arts organizations in general.
But could it be argued that one of the reasons for that is because we've had a very generous and extensive foundation community? Are arts organizations getting pressure from the foundation community to increase government support?
Well, on the contrary, I don't think it's just the foundation community. I think this community has been blessed by having incredible corporate support for the arts organizations. Yes, the foundations have helped a great deal, but I think the corporate support is.
But what about this? I just want to clarify. Is there pressure coming from those funding sources to go after government funds?
No, I don't think it's coming from them. I think it's our feeling that we need to look at as many areas as possible and be as aggressive as we can.
I know you want to not have the arts are special and not part of the free enterprise system, but when does the marketplace just come up and say, hey, maybe one orchestra in the Twin Cities instead of two, or maybe one dance troupe instead of two?
It could. I mean, this is something the community certainly has its right to do.
Is attendance way down, or is it something else?
No, attendance is not way down. I think we're finding a real difference in that people used to buy tickets in a full block series. You buy the whole year. Now we're seeing all over the country where people are buying shorter series, and indeed, they're buying single tickets.
And for cash flow, you need the upfront season ticket subscriber type of deal.
That is true. It helps a great deal.
You have an extraordinary endowment for the orchestra. Will you consider drawing down on that endowment more than you have to date in order to make up for the deficit?
We made a very specific decision several years ago that we would draw what we felt was a reasonable amount, which was a 6% trailing average, and we have not done any more than that.
When do you hope to be out of debt, so to speak?
Well, needless to say,
operating a deficit?
No, needless to say, our current 5-year plan is a 5-year plan. It's obviously reviewed every year, but we would certainly want to be at the outside out of that. Next year, I would assume we would still have some kind of a deficit. You don't turn things around immediately. If you do, you haven't made a careful study about what's going to work best.
You're at Orchestra Hall?
Am I personally at Orchestra Hall?
That's where the events mainly are?
That's right, and we own Orchestra Hall as well.
I live in the neighborhood. I'm going to go buy a couple tickets.
Well, we now have a Flex Pass situation. That's one of the things we've done. Yep. And you can buy a Flex Pass, which allows you to call up and say, you buy so many tickets, and these are not to specific concerts. Okay. And you can call up and say, gee, I'd like to go next week. And call up and say, are there seats where you'd like to sit? And that's one of your tickets.
I'll give it a try.
A good sales pitch was just made.
Yeah, good pitch, Nikki. Nice job, thanks. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to be here.
Great.
Thank you. As Almanac regulars know, we've been following the changes going on in the Soviet Union through our Channel 3 Moscow project since Mikhail Gorbachev's early days in office. We have a KTCA crew right now in what used to be called the Soviet Union. KTCA McNeil-Lair reporter Fred Sam Lazaro is traveling with Senator Paul Wellstone. Wellstone is visiting the Soviet Union, the land of his ancestors, for the first time. And this afternoon, we spoke with Paul Wellstone in St. Petersburg and began by asking him what surprised him the most as he took in his first impressions of Russia.
Well, the biggest surprise, I think, again, from landing right at the airport and looking is there's a certain, you know, it just, you see the potholes in the roads and the stark buildings and the lack of resources, and you wonder, my God, these were the people that were our arch foes and enemies. I mean, you just realize again that to me, and this whole, all the money spent on all the military weaponry, it's just unbelievable to me how much has been taken out of people's lives here. We spent time today in some food lines talking to people, and then after that, people just come up to you. The one thing that's really different is there was a time, I'm told, where, and it doesn't surprise me, that if you were an American, and certainly if you were a senator or public official, people would not talk to you at all. Now, everybody comes up to you and wants to talk. Again, I mean, I think the mood is one of, on the one hand, you know, hope, but on the other hand, people are, you know, they're angry about having to wait for food, and many people are really struggling. I think that I don't think people view Gorbachev last night came close to saying that he would resign. He didn't say he would. I don't think people really view it so much as a conflict between Gorbachev and Yeltsin, the way in which it's been really discussed in our media. I mean, I think people, I mean, they're at odds, but I don't think people view it as a struggle where Gorbachev would, for example, align himself with the military or anything like that. So, I mean, I think people are just more worried about their ability to get some food. There's a desperate need for food assistance, desperate need for medical assistance, and a desperate need for, you know, rebuilding an economy. And I think that everybody feels like the next several months, these winter months, is going to be the critical time.
The big vote on Northwest Airlines deal is on Monday. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that they should use the money to buy, instead of building the roads and stuff, I think they should use the money for the homeless people and stuff, instead of using all the money for that, or give them some of it, but not as much, not that much.
Well, I think they should go ahead with it. It would create a lot of jobs, new jobs and everything. I believe in that.
Has your mind changed in the past week at all, or have you
Not any of that stuff they had on television and that, nothing changed my mind. I was for it in the beginning.
And I'm going to level with you. We fibbed a little bit last week. We said then that we were having what may be our last discussion about the Northwest deal. Actually, we weren't really lying. It was kind of wishful thinking on our part. So tonight, we will have maybe one more discussion about the NWA financial package, talking to the legislators who will vote up or down this Monday on the deal. The Legislative Commission met again today, spent some time discussing how to perhaps amend this entire agreement.
I would hope that any member of the Commission that has other ideas, other suggestions, that we get those suggestions on the table today and have some discussion about that.
It would be our interpretation that the statute is written in such a way that we can only approve or disapprove the transaction.
With us now are some of the Commission members, a group that illustrates how the debate is cutting across party lines. In favor of the package, Wayne Simoneau, DFL House member from Fridley. Terry Dempsey is here. He also supports the deal, IR House member from New Ulm. Joining us to argue against the package, Paul Ogren, DFL legislator from Aiken. Here too, deal critic Gene Merriam, DFL senator from Coon Rapids. Thanks, fellows, for coming down. I know it's been a long day for you. Chairman Simoneau, you know, you heard Jeff Hamill today from the Airports Commission say, yeah, it's a great deal and we can be part of a consolidated airline industry and all that, but the routes and the route authority that Northwest is putting up as collateral from the East Coast to across the Atlantic are questionable in value, and he thinks that's a shaky part of the plan.
They have them valued at like $208 million, and some of the criticism of that value came when the sale of a failed Pan Am route, which went for $9 million. And after we had a detailed explanation of the ingredients that go into pricing a route, I think the $208 million was justified.
Jeff Hamill did make an impassioned plea today and saying that, look, there's risk, but we got to get on board, and if we do and it works out, Twin Cities is like one of 5 cities in the country that'll have a viable, thriving economic based on an airline hub. Senator Merriam, you're not opposed to that, are you?
I'm certainly not, but as I pointed out to Jeff Hamill today, I just had one basic fundamental disagreement with that very eloquent speech that he gave, that we indeed would be poised, Northwest would be poised to become a strong international airlines among the surviving few in the world, but for one fact, and that is that they're carrying in excess of $3 billion from their leveraged buyout of 2 years ago. And I, for the life of me, don't see how they're going to pay off that debt and do the things they need to do to be poised to assume that position in the world airline community.
And Representative Dempsey, how are they going to pay off that debt?
Well, obviously the debt is a great major concern that we've all been talking about since this thing got started. The reports are that they can, in fact, meet their obligations, and there's a difference of opinion, and it's just that. These are all opinions. There are no hard, fast rules to follow.
All right, there's a report that says that perhaps they can, but I believe that report called for rather fair to very good economic conditions now and into the future. We're in a recession. It appears it's going to continue for perhaps another year. This is a very volatile industry. A year from now, if this deal is approved, Northwest Airlines comes back and says, guess what? We're in a bit of trouble. How can you not give them more money and bail them out?
That's very easy, because we have the security in which we will be covered on the investment, and therefore there's no reason to give them more money. If we had an equity position, I would say that would be much more likely. But when we're as a lender with security, that's not likely. Equity position, we're looking for the upside gain. With the lending position we're in, all we're saying is we've got the money secured, and if we have to use the collateral to do it, so be it.
Jan, it's a good question. You're absolutely right. If we're in now, we're going to be in later. We can't afford not to be. Also, what do we say to the literally thousands of other Minnesota businesses, large, medium, and small, all of whom are under severe economic stress because of this recession, not because of a leveraged buyout, not because of something that they brought upon themselves. You know, there are only a limited number of shareholders in Northwest Airlines, but there are 4,400,000 shareholders in the state of Minnesota. And they have a lot of things on their plate, not just Northwest Airlines and a gorgeous bailout. They have health care that they need desperately, education of our children that we're not doing it well enough. All sorts of very basic needs, and that's really what government is all about. Somehow over the course of the 1980s, we wandered off down a faulty road that has not helped our economy.
But aren't states doing this more and more?
And part of that fault
yes, they are.
We ignored the demise of Burlington Northern here when they pulled out 10,000 jobs. We ignored the end of the manufacturing side of our computer industry, and it's all now done overseas. I don't think we can continue to ignore our major corporations. I think we should be partners with them and help them along. And I also agree with Ogren that we should be doing more helping Minnesota's businesses, which creates new jobs for Minnesota.
But you know, in a certain sense, the very situation that Paul talks about has been going all along, because we have been selecting what companies and industries we will help. An example, one in my district, 14 miles from where I live, got a loan, a grant of money. It went broke in the first part of the year, and they're not going to be restructured with some person from New Jersey buying them out. That meant that another company in Springfield probably couldn't get the money. So that's business of selection as to who gets some and who does not. It's not unique, and it's not going to be made worse.
We haven't done it to the extent that we're talking about doing in the Northwest. We've never done it to this extent. Now,
well, I'm not so sure we haven't. We've built that airport. That's ours, you know. The airlines don't.
But you're right, and we have the ownership of that
yeah,
that
and
airport.
we're going to wind
somebody else's
up.
airport.
We're going to wind up owning the facilities at Duluth and Hibbing, and we're going to own the NATCO air training facility out at the airport when this deal is over.
And who do we sell them to after this thing goes belly up?
Well, go ahead.
We will never lose the number of seats flying out of Minnesota. You know, we generate a lot of passenger miles out of Minnesota. Planes will fly that. The Airbus and Lockheed and other manufacturers will not quit manufacturing planes. There's a big market out there, and I think we have to be partners with Northwest. And I think that the way we've collateralized this, we will have a viable base here even without them.
But the partnership we've structured is that the principals at Northwest stand to gain everything from the upside potential. If the thing pans out, they make the money. If it doesn't, the taxpayers of Minnesota incur all the downside risk.
Okay, I don't agree.
That's the partnership we've structured.
No, the downside risk is the collateral. Now, you can dispute that the collateral is worth that much, but the experts that we saw there, people who have worked with the airline industry more than you have said it is adequately collateralized. Therefore, the downside risk is covered by the collateral. It's not the taxpayers. And I don't think it's fair to scare the taxpayers and saying if this thing collapses, there's no place to go but the taxpayers. That is not the deal.
Well, it's not true. It's not fair to give them false comfort either. That collateral that is going to be worth 20% of revenue, not 1.2 times. That's what the Pan Am bankruptcy shows us.
It was a flight with no passengers on it.
That's right.
I'm not talking about just one. I'm talking about all the Pan Am.
If you bought a route with passengers, it's worth 1.25 or 1.9 with passengers.
Paul Ogren, there was talk that maybe this deal would be tinkered with by this commission, and then I understand today Senator Moe said absolutely not. We're going to vote it up or down Monday. Is there any tinkering that could have been done to this deal that
Senator
would have changed?
Senator Moe allowed a chance to tinker with it today.
Yeah, but it was today. Excuse me, it would have either been today or not at all. Hold your peace. I'm sorry, that's correct. Is there any tinkering that could have been done to this deal that would have gotten you to support it? And Senator Miriam, same question to you.
Can you make a silk
purse out of a
sow here?
To
be honest, I think not. I think this was one of the most horrendous jobs of negotiating ever done on behalf of the state of Minnesota. I fault Governor Carlson. I fault Congressman Oberstar. I fault Commissioner Gillette. I think it's tragic that we do not have an equity position, that we did not literally demand that the debtors of Northwest Airlines come to the table, participate in the negotiation, take an equity position, and improve the reality, the fiscal reality of that company. I think it's tragic that we didn't demand that employees be given an opportunity to buy into Northwest Airlines. That would have allowed all of us, as Minnesota legislators, on behalf of the taxpayer, to make an effective contract with those 18,000 hardworking Minnesota employees. But what are they in this deal? They are interested bystanders. They are not genuine participants, and that's not right. It's simply not fair.
Why didn't you offer something today, Senator?
Well, from my perspective, that this deal can't be improved enough to get me to vote for it. I think there's a lot of things that could be done to make this much less risk and for the taxpayers of the state, but I don't sense that there's a willingness to do that.
Let me ask Representative Dempsey one. Moe, Vanasek, Long, Reichgott, Johnson, and Ogren. 1/3 of the members of the commission I look as all Democrats who have some statewide ambitions. Is this playing a part? Is this some subtext that's going on here, and with the range and with labor? And as a Republican, you could maybe cast a disinterested, make it a disinterested observance on that.
Having no statewide ambitions, maybe that's maybe
should
that's
I added your name?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have.
I don't know. These things have a way of playing out over time. They don't have long tails on them. But I think right now there's going to be a lot of pressure on the DFL from some labor unions to support this, because I think there is strong labor support for this package.
And you want to alienate the Iron Range, Paul Ogren, as a statewide guy? You know?
It's not just about, let's be real, it's not just about labor unions. It's predominantly about big money and big power in America. The 800-pound gorilla sits wherever he or she likes, and that's the reality. Only a very large corporation could pull this off. Joe's Hardware down on Main Street wouldn't stand a chance, and we'd say, too bad.
Some predictions on...
But Paul, we saw those 4 labor union leaders. Are you calling those big gorillas? Is that what you're saying they are? I mean, I don't think that's fair to characterize. They're very nice people, Teamsters and a few of those.
Gentlemen, can we get predictions on Monday's vote?
Give us a total.
Yeah, it's going to pass.
By what?
I said 1 vote. I've changed it to 2 votes.
So, what, 12?
It'll be 12-8.
12-6 it would be.
It's 2 more members than we have.
Yeah, 12-6.
Tragically, I think this deal was bought and sold 6 months ago. I think it'll pass 10-8.
Senator Miriam?
I think it'll pass 11-7.
10-8.
Well, gentlemen, we will see how good your head counting is come Monday.
Appreciate you coming down tonight after a long day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Today is Friday the 13th. It's the Ides of December. It's also the feast day of St. Lucia, who they tell me is the patron saint of hemorrhages and dysentery. 3 incredibly bad omens, but we've decided to press ahead with the index file section just the same. Our last index file question had to do with the Merriam Park neighborhood in St. Paul, located just east of the Town and Country Golf Club. We showed you a bit of tape, you may remember, of a section of Merriam Park that some locals call Pill Hill, now a residential district, but back in the early 1890s, it was undeveloped land, where a group of influential state residents wanted to build something big. Archbishop John Ireland was an enthusiastic supporter of this plan, but the hopes were dashed in 1893 by a state commission. So the question was, what was to be built in the Merriam Park neighborhood back in the 1890s? Well, how did you do on this one? Well, maybe it was that blustery winter weather, but we received many calls of the wild.
My name is Jean, and it was the cathedral that they were going to build there. And you're right, that was a dead giveaway.
Connemara Patch. It was a shanty town under Dayton's Bluff, east of downtown St. Paul, settled by Irish immigrants who were brought to Minnesota by Bishop Ireland during the Irish potato famine.
I would like to answer the question that was asked on what was to be built at Merriam Park, and I would say the governor's mansion.
The major surprising Merriam Park building project to which you refer was in point of fact the largest multi-purpose building effort ever contemplated in Minnesota. The project would have entailed, among other things, a domed sports arena, a fantastically large enclosed shopping mall, an aircraft engine repair facility, a garbage incinerator, a chopsticks factory, a new airport, and a high-speed light rail train linking the Twin Cities and Chicago.
Hey, leave your name next time, because the producers so appreciated the fact that while you weren't right, you tried to be funny. Let's hear from somebody who did call us with that correct guess.
Archbishop Ireland, along with other civic leaders, lobbied hard for a new state capitol building to be located in the Midway area. They saw this as the first step toward the merging of the Twin Cities into one.
Yes, it was the new state capitol building that Archbishop Ireland was pushing for in the Merriam Park neighborhood, and many thought that the capitol would indeed be built on what is now the northwest corner of Cleveland and Marshall Avenues. But an 1893 state commission dashed the hopes of Ireland and other supporters, and the capitol was built downtown on its present site. For this week's Index Files Stumper, we move up in time to the present, and we present you another question in our noted Mystery Person series. The person we are asking about, not shown here, born somewhere in southern Minnesota, October 29th, 1971. And although he or she moved to California while young, this person still carries his or her Minnesota past in a very visible, tangible way. How about that for a clue? And here's another hint. This person is in the entertainment industry and is the godchild of a noted American. So that's a couple of hints for you there. Who is this person? We've been more than generous with the clues here, so call us with the right answer, 612-229-1430, the number to dial with your guesses. You'll reach an answering machine that you can talk to for as long as you want on any topic. You can think of it as an electronic public affairs version of Fraser Crane. 612-229-1430, that's the number. And if you're smart and articulate, or if you're dumb and articulate, you just might end up on the air next week. Last week, our discussion about whether the Vulcans are offensive to women prompted many calls, including the views of these two very different callers.
When they start smudging men as well as women, then I'll believe that that's what they're doing. Otherwise, I believe that they are harassing women, and I think that something like that ought to be brought out rather than attacking the women's organization.
I think this is an atrocity. The Vulcans are very important to St. Paul. They really don't mean any harm. It's a few good men out there having fun. I think these women better get off their damn high horse for the simple reason that they want to capture the spotlight as long as they can, and I think that's ridiculous. My father was a Vulcan. He never had a problem with his crew, and unfortunately, I don't know what they're trying to grasp at.
Many of you also took the time to tell us that you appreciated the appearance of retiring WCCO television anchor Dave Moore. The call we liked best was phoned in by Sharon from Belgrade.
I believe Almanac reached its epitome with interviewing Dave Moore on December 6th, and this is a tribute to Dave Moore. Oh, CCO, where your strategy. You gave Dave Moore his final show without the viewers say so. Credibility is Dave Moore, and bedtime news and Channel 4. Oh, Almanac, bring back Dave Moore, bring Dave back. We're going to miss you, Dave Moore.
Sharon does provide us with a reminder that we don't get nearly enough songs or poems or performances on the old machine. So let those creative juices flow. Be careful when you do, but dial us up. And remember, your call can remain anonymous. You can use somebody else's name, maybe even somebody you don't like. 612-229-1430. A couple of program notes before we get out of here. Next Tuesday, 9 o'clock, KTCA Reports. It's going to feature a special look at the housing problem here in Minnesota and around the country. KTCA Reports, the housing crisis. It's next Tuesday, 9 o'clock. Another note, this Sunday, now NBC is airing a national debate with the Democrats who are running for president. Channel 11 here in town has a problem with a football game. They have a conflict, can't run the debate, so we get to show it. The debate will be live, Channel 17, 5:30 p.m., and will be repeated Sunday night, Channel 2, 10:10 p.m. Just thought you might want to know. That's it for tonight. Until next Friday, for Jan Ingrid Smaby, Eric Escola, be careful.
If you missed this week's edition of Almanac, tune in for our scheduled repeat Sunday morning at 9:30. And coming up next, Searching for Answers, Look to the East. Washington Week in Review is next. And tomorrow night, it's a big evening filled with big band talent. Our special kicks off with echoes of the Big Band, hosted by Merv Griffin, tomorrow at 7.
Environmental law. The St. Paul Companies, a worldwide insurance organization. Group Health, Inc., providing medical and dental care in over 50 Twin Cities locations. Pentax Ophthalmic, local manufacturers of eyeglass lenses and anti-reflective lens coatings. NSP, the energy to make things better. And by Gabbard's Furniture and Design Studio of Edina, there's no place like home and there's no place like Gabbard's. Arts Reporting in Almanac is presented through a grant from Ashland Oil and its Super America subsidiary, which has 159 employee-operated stores throughout Minnesota. Almanac is a production of KTCA TV for the stations of Minnesota Public Television.
Coming up next, the real story behind the headlines on Washington Week in Review. Tuesday, Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Minneapolis.
Skid Row's a madhouse. A lot of drugs, a lot of drinking on the streets.
America is in the midst of a housing crisis.
If you don't pay rent, you ain't got nothing really left to do nothing with.
Thousands of men, women, and children are being tossed out into the street with nowhere to go.
What's being done to improve housing in the Twin Cities? I'm Kevin Berger. Join us for KTCA Reports, Tuesday at 9, here on Channel 2.
Friday night's broadcast schedule is brought to you in part by the law firm of Moss & Barnett, a professional association providing a full range of legal services. Ernst & Young, offering client-centered accounting, tax, and management consulting services to businesses large and small. Norwest Banks, providing investment, insurance, and banking services. RSP Architects Limited, building value by design. And by the members of Channel 2.
Chances are Johnny Mathis is going to show up right here just for you. And chances are you're going to love it. Johnny Mathis, chances are.
Sunday night at 8.
Este es el Canal 2, la estación apoyada por personas como usted.
Washington Week in Review is brought to you locally by Briol & Wilmus, a law firm representing individual investors in securities litigation and arbitration. Dane Bosworth, serving the investment needs of KTCA viewers throughout the Upper Midwest. Northwestern National Life Foundation, dedicated to improving the community's quality of life. The Pink Companies and their employees, providers of floor coverings, office furnishings, and service for business and builders. And by Boise Cascade, making and distributing paper and office products in Minnesota for more than 25 years.
A political death knell for Mikhail Gorbachev. Our top story tonight on Washington Week in Review. Ford Motor Company, worldwide manufacturer of automotive products, has provided funding for this program. At Ford, quality is job one. Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the financial support of viewers like you. Now here's moderator Paul Duke.
Good evening. We may be witnessing the final days of Mikhail Gorbachev's reign, a new day again dawning in the Soviet Union, or what used to be the Soviet Union. It may be a new day for Western Europe as well, as it moves toward closer political and economic cooperation at a time when the American economy continues to have big problems. President Bush is getting another challenge from his right flank. And, speaking of rights, this is the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights, one of whose major tenets was validated again this week in the Palm Beach rape trial. For our Bill of Fare tonight, Ruth Marcus of the Washington Post, Howard Feynman of Newsweek, Alan Murray of the Wall Street Journal, and Hedrick Smith, who's a freelance journalist these days. Well, Rick, we've asked you this perhaps 200 times on this program. Are we now seeing the final countdown for Mikhail Gorbachev?
Tonight, I got a different answer.
Give it to us.
No, but I mean, every other time I've said no, and I think the answer is this time yes. It's almost like a Greek tragedy, Paul. You have this sense of inevitability, slowly unfolding. It's been going on for quite a while. It started a year or so ago, then you had the coup, then after the coup he's made all these efforts to pull the Union together, 12 republics, 11, 9, 7, couldn't get them to sign on, and then of course this week up appears the Slavic Commonwealth put together by Boris Yeltsin, the Russian Republic leader, Leonid Kravchuk, the Ukrainian leader, and the Belarusian parliamentary leader, all saying they want to get together, but without Gorbachev. And then now, today, 5 Central Asian republics have said they want to agree to join this Commonwealth. All the while, Gorbachev saying, if you get rid of the Union, there'll be anarchy, there'll be chaos, and in effect saying, you know, there also won't be a job for me. Everybody's speculating about when he's going to resign. His spokesman saying today he's not going to resign before Secretary of State Baker gets there next week. Obviously he wants one more last try to talk to the Americans, another try on the world stage. But I think the clock is ticking. It is conceivable that he could make some agreement with Yeltsin to have some kind of ceremonial position, but Gorbachev says he doesn't want to just be a member of the wedding. If he can't be the bridegroom, he doesn't want to be there. So I think really we are seeing the end of this era by this man who has really changed history for all of us, you know, who let Europe reunite, let Germany reunite, changed his society internally, ended the Cold War, and yet he hasn't been able to keep pace with change in his own country.
Rick, Mikhail Gorbachev has become a very sympathetic person to people in the West, somebody that people feel, you know, they look at him and they feel good about him, but apparently there was intense dislike for him in the Soviet Union among these leaders. Why?
Well, a couple of reasons. In terms of ordinary people, there's the sense that we've had 6.5 years of this and we got less food on the table this winter than we had when we began it. So it's a very practical, in American political terms, pocketbook issue. Gorbachev hasn't delivered the bacon in the most fundamental sense of the word. Secondly, he has really disrupted the lives, the power structure, the privileges of an awful lot of the most powerful people in the Union. And then in terms of the Republic leaders, they are saying, fine, Mikhail Gorbachev, we took you seriously. self-determination. We in Lithuania, we in Ukraine, we in Belarus, we in Kazakhstan, we want to run things our own way. And he's now saying, almost like a father to a teenager who wants to take the car out after having gotten his driver's license, wait a minute, I've still got the keys. And they don't like it. I mean, I think it's really very simple. He's trying to stand in the path of history, and actually a history that he gave a great shove to. So it just won't work.
Rick, Bob Gates, the CIA director, said that there's going to be more chaos in the Soviet Union now than any time since the revolution, I believe. Is anything that the West can do, any aid from the United States or the Western powers, going to be able to prevent that from happening this winter and in the next many months?
Well, you know, Mr. Gates is well known for rather gloomy assessments of what goes on in the Soviet Union. And I think it is possible to look at the situation there. Aeroflot has just shut down 92 of its, the main airports in the Soviet Union. The Lenin Library is shut down because the toilets and the electricity don't work, in addition to the food shortages and so forth. So you can look at all that and say, total collapse, total chaos. I actually think that's overdoing it. If you say it's going to be the worst since the revolution, that means it's going to be worse than Stalin's purges. Going to be worse than World War II?
Well, what's the reason? He is a very political man. What's the reason why he was hyping this?
Well, I would guess he's hyping it because there's going to be some justification for the West to kick in some more aid. And certainly, even without going that far in the hype, there certainly are things. The Europeans are saying right now the thing to do is to rush food aid, to rush medical aid. There really is a desperate situation in Soviet
the United
hospitals.
States is now moving in that direction too, isn't it?
It is. There's going to be a conference next month. But one wonders if Gates is really serious, and the president believes Gates, how can we afford to wait for a conference next month if it's that bad? If you're going to have an impact on December and January and February, you got to do something now. That's what the Europeans are saying.
We have this new Commonwealth, as they're calling it, which was formed this week, which some people say is a prescription for more chaos. But there's another vital question here, Rick, and that is, where does the Soviet military stand in all this?
Well, I think the Commonwealth is being misread. I think the Commonwealth is a great step forward. We've drifted now for the last 4 or 5 months, watched the Soviet Union drift out of a union. People have worried about nuclear weapons, about the military, about economic reform, about currency, about banks. Those issues have been unresolved by Gorbachev, and I think one of the really important things for us to see is that Yeltsin and Kravchuk and the others have now agreed to have joint control over nuclear weapons. Doesn't solve all the issues, but Secretary of State Baker did say today he hadn't seen any moves on nuclear weapons that caused any great concern about any change in the chain of command. They've agreed to have a single currency, they've agreed to move together on economic reform, and they've agreed, very importantly, not to have fights over territories, to agree to accept each own borders. Those are very big steps forward. They don't stop the free fall in the economy, they don't stop the political turbulence, but they do at least give a structure for the West now to begin to deal with. And I think that's one reason why you see the President and the others talking about new conferences, new coordination, new efforts to move towards aid.
And you don't see any threat from the Soviet military at this point?
To the outside world, I'd say no. It's fragmented terribly. As somebody said, they're following their paychecks. If Boris Yeltsin can pay them, they'll be loyal to Yeltsin. I think they're much more worried about whether they're going to be paid and whether they're going to get housing and food than they are. They're not an army. They're not a force that could attack an outside power.
Back in this country, Alan, at the White House, they may be worried about what's going on in the Soviet Union, but some of the president's advisors are much more worried now about the state of the American economy.
Very worried. And if you want to understand why people are so uneasy about this economy and where it's heading, all you really have to do is pick up one of our newspapers or magazines and look at the steady stream of stories coming out of big blue-chip American companies announcing large staff cuts. In the past week alone, General Motors announced that it was going to speed up 20,000 jobs that it was cutting out. TRW cutting 10,000 jobs. Xerox cutting 2,500 jobs. Even IBM, which has long touted its no layoff policy, said last month that it was going to eliminate 20,000 jobs, some of them through layoffs. Now, you may remember a few years ago it was sort of fashionable among management consultants and others to talk about Japanese-style lifetime employment practices, where you had a more permanent contract between employers and employees. But the fact of the matter is that in this country, we are heading in the exact opposite direction. Companies seem to be more willing than ever before to let workers go when time gets tough. And that, of course, that undermines consumer confidence. That's one of the reasons why people aren't going out and buying cars, buying houses. They're worried about losing their jobs, and that's one reason why the economy continues to be weak.
Well, aren't you saying that there's a vicious circle here as far as business is concerned? Business lays off people. There are more people who are unemployed, so the people have less buying power, so business is hurt in the long run by some of the policies which it's pursuing.
That's true, and for instance, the chairman of General Motors this week, when he announced his plans, expressed that very concern. But you know, this is a little different than the kind of layoffs you've seen in past recessions, where workers are sent home for a few weeks and expect to come back once the recession is over. These are companies that have long-term structural problems. They are eliminating positions that they have no intention of putting back once the economy gets out of recession. So it's really something that has to do with a longer-term problem of facing American industry.
The basic number of the unemployment rate is not as high now as it was the last time we had a really serious recession in the early 80s. But yet you hear anecdotally when you travel around, you talk to people, more stories of pain, more people who experience unemployment. Why